Hello.
Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of the Greater Mythos Podcast, yet another video games, movies, and pop culture centered podcast. What do you think?
I think it sounds good.
That was it.
Sounds awesome.
Was it more than you expected, less than you expected?
It was just what I expected, I guess.
I don't know how to feel about that.
No, I mean, it wasn't too long and it wasn't too short.
Well, fantastic. Well, then, I mean, we're officially off to the races. This is it. This is official episode 1. And in a different world, we might actually know what we are doing, have a better approach, or seem more professional. But for now, this is what we got. So, I mean,
We are what we are.
We are what we are, and we don't throw a fit. I think that's what the saying is, or not. But yeah, so for the tens of people that will hear this, why don't you give your perspective on the rundown of what's going on, if you have any?
On the podcast?
The podcast.
Yeah, so this originated about a year ago. The idea, anyway. We talked about doing a podcast together because we have very similar interests.
We do.
We also have the same first name.
Yeah,
So that's a whole other story.
it is.
I'm Josh, and he's Josh.
Indeed. I didn't say that at the beginning. I guess I could have, but there's a part of me that, I don't know. The fact is that both of our legal birth names is Josh. But there's a cynical part of me that thinks that if I was listening to this, I would think that they were making that up for some sort of weird comedic effect. Is that just me?
Well, maybe. I'm pretty sure I saw, and it might have been a sports thing, but I'm pretty sure I saw a podcast where they were both named Josh before. But the name is very common, so.
So you're saying that we just have no specialness at all?
Oh, we're definitely special, just maybe not in our name.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going. Both Josh, about a year ago.
Yeah, so we're also brothers-in-law,
That's true.
and so we have that in common as we're brothers. We also
In law.
both like talking about nerdy things
Oh, don't we just?
to the detriment of our family members who aren't into those things.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate because specifically, since you said the brothers legally bounded by law, so I am married to your sister, and she's wonderful. She is, she's my pearl. She is my 1956 Honda Civic. That was a bad car. I meant to. Oh man, hang on, I messed that up. Oh no. Oh,
It's all right.
why did I say Honda Civic?
I don't know. I'm not a car person, so you
I'm
didn't
not
offend
either.
me with that comment.
Oh, I guess I meant to say like Corvette or something, but man, did Civic come out. Anyway, no, you're right. So we like to discuss. We like to chew. Your dad, Papa-in-law, likes to get in on some of the conversations, which is fun. Because sometimes I feel like, and hopefully he listens to this so he can chuckle at this. Sometimes he gets really excited about either something that we're talking about, or he just starts talking about something that he's really excited about.
Mhm.
And sometimes, not all the times, sometimes he gets going and he has this look in his eye as if I know exactly what he's talking about,
Yes.
which is not always the case.
And interestingly enough, I think that might be a Baron trait because I
Oh.
think all of his sons have that same thing.
You just gave away your last name. Do you care about that?
No.
Okay. I think it's already out on TikTok anyway or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Josh Barons, so
So you're not worried.
no.
I'm worried for you.
Well, I'm a very hard person to find on the internet because I'm really not anywhere.
Interesting. Do you have ExpressVPN?
I do. I generally only use it when I'm downloading stuff, though, just because I don't really like my ISP tracking me downloading video games.
We're also not sponsored. I'm sorry I said that.
Yeah. Well,
Well-
it'd be very impressive if we were sponsored already.
Man. Anyway, no sponsorship. Anyway, so we're excited to talk about the good things, brothers-in-law, Papa Ray, all that good stuff. Yep. And we did, to pull the curtain back, we did a little, for lack of better words, the little test. We did a little dry run of this a few days ago. I can't remember how long ago it was. but we had reminisced that about a year ago tomorrow, really, I think
Mm-hmm.
a year ago tomorrow was when we first kind of had the where is this relationship going kind of conversation. Is it going towards a podcast? I hope it is. And here we are.
Yeah, we definitely both liked the idea, but at the time, I don't think either of us had the means back then, because that was before you did the other podcast too.
Correct.
So
Was it?
I think so. It might have been,
You're right.
or it might have been like
Interesting.
right around the time when you were talking about it.
You know what? No, it was before, because I think we started that one in November,
Yeah, that sounds about
October
right.
or November, because I remember the second episode we did in the other show was a Christmas themed episode. So you're right. Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, we're here. I don't know. I do not want to fully explain why our name is what it is, because I feel like that's just for us. That's for you and me. And in that time, I very vaguely explained it to my father over a text, which I'm sure just confused him even more. So that's fine.
Well, we can
But
just give a
yeah,
very, very brief explanation that it's an
go
inside
ahead.
joke.
Go ahead.
We were playing a board game at the table with the family, and
Yes.
I continued to explain my answers to things based
Yes.
on the fact that they were part of the greater mythos of whatever topic we were
Yes.
talking about. And
Yes.
that made Josh laugh a lot.
It did. It did.
It
And
made me
it's
laugh
not,
a lot.
it did. And I'm glad it did, because we had a moment. It's not necessarily, and this is not meant to be a shot, it's not that it was just such a banger of a joke. It was more so that what we were talking about and what the topic of the game was, you just would not have thought of that topic having an expanded mythos of, just characters and all the backstory and stuff. I don't know. It tickled my fancy. It tickled yours. I think we were the only ones um, that appreciated that, because I told Sarah again, like either this morning or the day before, that we were just going to go with that name because I liked it. And she just kind of gave me a look like, just don't embarrass me or something. But,
Yeah, it
yeah.
sounds like her. Well,
Well,
it's funny for us, and that's the important thing.
that's right. Because otherwise we would have been Josh and Josh. Couldn't do
That's
that.
got to be taken. I can't.
Sure it is.
So I don't know. We'd have to, like my dad said, Josh squared, but he's also a math geek, so
Yeah.
that only
Yeah.
math geeks would chuckle at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm one too, but even I just moaned at it. It wasn't really.
You didn't chuckle. It was a faint moan.
No. No. Well,
Well, yeah.
he's entitled to
Well,
dad jokes.
Indeed, that's what I was going to say. It's almost grandpa jokes too, because he's about to be a grandpa for like the 12th time. So God bless him.
12th time.
Yeah. So a big part of why I think that name fit, besides the inside joke, is because I feel like we're explaining ourselves now. It's okay. It covers the multitude, because when you and I hang out, we talk the video games, we talk the movies, we talk about the books. We talk about things. It's not just one thing.
Mhm.
We're open-minded. You know what I'm saying?
Greater mythos of the nerd culture.
Oh, be careful. Don't get too greedy with it, though.
Hey, if I can make it work in a board game, I can make it work anywhere.
I suppose that's what they all think, and then how they fall from grace. Yeah, well, so here we are, episode 1. We're looking good. So I think another, and I've told you this off air, I think another key that I kind of wanted to keep in mind was to be prepared, but obviously not be to be prepared, but not to be too prepared. Because if you get too prepared and then like you burp and you forget your notes and then you're like, and you don't know what to say, that's no fun.
Mhm.
That's not good radio. So I figured that at least for the first few episodes or so that we pick, 3 or 4 separate things that we found interesting throughout the week or whatever medium that is, and just, spit it at each other and see what happens.
Well, that's all I've got, so that works for
Fantastic. Because if you didn't, we'd probably just stop now.
me. So I can go ahead and throw one out there.
Do it.
We can talk about games that we played when we were younger. What got
my
us
goodness.
into nerdy culture? It doesn't just have to be games either. Books, comics, whatever shaped us, our younger selves.
That's good.
So we'll
That's
start
good.
with you, since I asked the
Oh,
question.
goodness. Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. Let me think. I have, oh man, my brother would probably remember this too. I have a lot of good memories as far as games are concerned. With the Kingdom Hearts series,
Yeah, yeah.
the first and the second one, however long ago those came out, we played those pretty hard. PlayStation 2, those were not by any means like the first games that we played. I remember the N64, Mario 64 classic. What else was on the 64? Paper Mario. I can't remember which one that was. And I think it was a drastic jump from the 64 to the PlayStation 2, at least in our house. So we went from, I'm sure there were steps in between this, but we went from like a Paper Mario and your Mario 64 to the third age on PlayStation 2. Having that interesting jump of technology and all that stuff. And we're not super old, by the way, you and I. I think we're the same age.
Yes.
So we're both 24. And so we're not necessarily 90s babies or however that is, but also you kind of got the tail end of it. But also someone might say you were only like 3 or 4, and they're probably right. But I think some of it kind of carried over for, I don't know, when you're like in the 6 and 7 age. Maybe I'm just talking out of my butt.
Well, it was the same for me. My first game system I ever owned was a Nintendo 64, and it was I was 4 years old, so it was year 2000, or maybe the Christmas right before that.
What a good year.
And I remember getting it for Christmas. It was right at the end of its life cycle too, actually. I think the GameCube came out like that year or the year after. So I got the system, and one of my brother's friends, or a couple of them, started dropping off their old games because I guess they didn't play them anymore. So I actually had a very large library of games that people just gave me.
Sure.
At the time, and that kind of cemented that. So I think of the system with a lot of nostalgia, actually.
Of course. Do you remember, really quick, there were several Star Wars games for 64, but there was one, was it like Naboo Starfighter? Was that a specific game, or am I dreaming that up?
I think that's a PlayStation 2 game.
Then it's not the one, because there was one for 64, and for some reason I remember it being like on Naboo specifically. You had the yellow, like cross-shaped ship. I can't remember what they're called. But yeah, anyway.
There might be a game like that for the N64, but that exact cover art I remember being on my PS2 for whatever reason.
They might have brought it back. They were making millions.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of Star Wars games on the 64. The first game I ever played actually was Pod Racer on the 64.
Yes. Okay, so Pod Racer. Who did you have Anakin like from the top? Was that your first racer that you have? Do you remember?
I think, but I don't know if. Now I could be wrong about this, but I don't know if like the data or the memory is stored on the cartridge. It probably is back then, because I think I had every racer. So I was getting, so I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say that I have this faint memory that you had to unlock Sebulba, and just for some reason we thought it was the wildest thing, that like the mystery that was Sebulba, and you had to unlock him. I don't think we ever did. But also, I think it was also that he just looks like a weird alien space chicken. But yeah, so Nintendo 64, PlayStation. I have a lot more memory from the PlayStation 2. A lot of Kingdom Hearts, good memories there. Some of the classic like James Bond games. So obviously on GoldenEye, 64 of those GoldenEye, obviously everyone and their mother knows, presumably. But on the PlayStation 2, there was crap. What was it? It was the Pierce Bronson Bond games, and they were really good.
Oh, they were.
Unless if I'm just lying to myself.
Well, the one I remember playing the most was Nightfire. That one was also on the GameCube, which is where I
was going to say that was on GameCube.
And I played it with several friends, multiplayer. I never played the actual story because I didn't own it, but the multiplayer of that game was so fun. It wasn't balanced. I mean, you could get one shot across the map by a laser gun in a James Bond game, but
of course,
hey, it was fun, and we played it all the time.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely remember that. But I want to ask you something about you playing Kingdom Hearts. Because it was interesting. Kingdom Hearts is half Disney, but it's also half Final Fantasy.
Yes.
Do you like the Final Fantasy games?
Cards on the table. I don't think I've played any of them. I don't think I've played any Final Fantasy game. I played Okay, bear with me. Do not laugh at me. I played. There was the one game. It was just with that one character. He had the dual pistols, like with the bayonets on them. It was called like Dirge of Cerberus or something? Am I pulling that out of my butt too? You remember that?
That doesn't sound familiar to me, but I'm
Huh.
sure there is a game like that.
Yeah. So to answer your question, no. But I think, this is probably just a stereotypical thing that I did. I think I just looked at those games, plural, and at the time, from what I could comprehend, thinking about the, no pun intended, mythos of the Final Fantasy games, there's a lot to them. And
There is.
I feel that even if you started from game one, whatever that is, up until this point, you still don't really have an exact clue of what's going on.
Well, and that's also partly to do with the Kingdom Hearts games being the way they are and having
Right.
such a convoluted story. I watched a YouTube video years ago trying to explain the first two games. It was like
Oh,
made to prepare you for the third one when it was coming out. And
Kingdom Hearts, right?
yeah, and it was like
Yeah.
an hour-long video. And I don't know why I watched the whole thing, but I think the
Oh,
surprising thing was at the end, I still had no idea what was going on.
yeah. Did you even play the third one after that?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I was intending after the video, I was so confused, so I went out and bought the collection for PS4 that has all the games on it.
yes.
And then I played it for like 20 minutes and then never touched it again. And
That seems so unlike you.
I know. Well, I think
What happened?
it was timing because that was when I had started the original Persona 5 and Fire Emblem Three
Gotcha.
Houses and a bunch of other stuff.
Uh-oh.
When you're in the middle of a bunch of games and you're struggling to piece it together, the solution is not to just add another game in there, I think.
Right.
But that
Oh
is
my
what I
gosh.
did.
Let me ask you this. Now, this is the part of the podcast where Josh, me, Josh, goes down 6 different rabbit holes at once. So, have grace, fellow listeners. Also, my dad. You said more or less don't add more games that are confusing on top of confusing games. Isn't that kind of what you said, more or less?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already trying to understand the story in 3 games at the same time, so.
Right. So with that, so I told you, I share with you, I started the Expanse, the book series.
Yes.
And I think I have about 10 chapters left of the first book. I'm not sure if you've like seen the books in person. There's some big boys.
Mhm.
They're pretty thick. They got a lot of girth, if I may say. But nowadays I'm into that. I'm into the side note. I've realized that I think I'm more into fantasy than sci-fi. Love them both. I have a place in my heart for both. But anyway, so my goal is now, I don't know if I told you, I bought the first 3 books in the Expanse series on Amazon for $30. It was a package. So I started the first one about a week or so ago. And then long story short, I found a different series that isn't as long by a different author that's more on the fantasy side. And I was like, I'm going to finish this first Expanse book because it's long as poo. And then I'm going to take a break from the Expanse and read this other series and then come back to it. Because I cannot, to go back to what you were saying, I can't read 2 books at once. That was a really long-winded way to say that I don't think I can. I mean, obviously I physically can, but like, I don't know. It irks me emotionally.
It's definitely difficult because, especially with books and games, if you switch to something else in the middle of it, like, forbid you ever stop in the middle of a book and then you
Nope.
go back
Can't
to
do it.
it. And in
Nope.
games, it's the same way. I'm like, what was I doing? What's the objective?
Where am I?
And if I don't answer that question for myself quickly, I lose all motivation and I switch to something else. And
Right.
that might just be attention span issues. But
So do you read more than one book at once, or do you one at a time too? More or less?
I'm one at a time. I guess
Okay.
you could say I've always had another series on hold, the Sword of Truth
Right.
series, which my dad has always pestered me to finish. And it's not that I didn't like it. I read the first 2 books and they were really good, but I just got distracted with other things and I just haven't gone back.
Yeah.
Like
Nothing wrong with that.
reading the Mass Effect books, which
Yes.
I mean, even my dad, we both finished all 4 of them just on that one trip to Florida.
Yeah, I was gonna say I remember that's when you kind of roped him into it. I'm sure he knew about it beforehand. But all right, now going back to your question. So the game, the beginning of the gamerverse for us. It's your turn. What was yours?
So yeah, my first game ever was the Pod Racer game, Star Wars Pod Racer, and I
That's what you
really
said,
liked that
yes.
game. But I had never really played video games before, so I guess I didn't understand it. I was just having fun because I was going fast, and I think that was.
Of course.
And I was running into things because I wasn't very good.
Of course.
And I had several other games, Mario games. And in terms of other Star Wars games, I also had the Dark Forces Star Wars game,
Yes.
which I was so confused, and I would get stuck on like the second level because I didn't know where on the wall to press the A button to move forward.
Are you Katarn in that one?
What's his name? He's like a Han Solo guy.
Kyle Katarn?
I think that sounds familiar. Right. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, so you're on a mission where you're in this junkyard area and you have to like go through this doorway, but it was like dark in the room, and I guess my TV wasn't very good or something, and I could not see where the button was because it was pixelated graphics. I couldn't really make it out.
Yes. It was more humbling days.
So I never got past that part. And recently I watched a series of someone playing through it, and it looked like there's a lot of cool levels in it. Was it Tak Rendar? Is that his name?
Yes.
That's his
it was
name.
Dash Rendar.
So, yeah.
What the heck?
So yeah.
I forgot about that.
And it looked like it was a lot of fun, but also hard to control and difficult. But the only levels I'd ever played were the Hoth level where you're flying around, and that was really fun. And then the next level you're on foot, and I got confused and stuck. So I never got to see the rest of the game, and I owned it for years.
Interesting.
Then of course I also got a PlayStation.
Of course.
My technically the second console I ever had was a Game Boy Advance. My brother gave me his old one when I was 6, and I got several games for that too. So I played the heck out of that. And then I got my PlayStation later on, which was my first new system that was mine.
What'd you get? What was the first one there? Was it Lord of the Rings: The Third Age?
It wasn't the Third Age, but I did play it. I did play it on the PS2.
It's pretty good.
Oh man, I don't even remember. The game I'm thinking of right now was Ty the Tasmanian Tiger.
Excuse me?
I think that's the title of the game. Yeah, you're like this tiger who runs around and has boomerangs. It's like an adventure platformer.
Are you sure it's not Crash Bandicoot?
No.
Okay.
But that was my first PlayStation game I ever played, but it was not one I owned.
Right.
It was my friend. Okay. My friend had a PlayStation 1, and we would play the Crash games. And one game that we ended up playing all the time, which might have given my parents the motivation, or I guess the understanding of what they should get me for Christmas. Because every single weekend I would go to my friend's house and spend the night there, and we'd play Crash Bash, which was like the party game they made in the Crash universe.
Of course.
And we'd play it every weekend. We'd rent the game, literally. Instead of buying it, we'd rent the game from the Hollywood Video near us.
Yes, Hollywood. Or Blockbuster, if there was.
I didn't actually live near one until I moved.
Huh.
My first place I lived, we had a Hollywood Video, and that was it.
Interesting.
Yeah. And in Crash Bash, I don't know why we kept renting it. It was super hard. And some of the mini games were fun, but not all of them. But I just remember we played it every weekend. And then when I finally did get my PlayStation 2, I remember that same friend got me a Crash game during a birthday party.
There you go. Are you still friends with him?
I'm acquaintances with him, I guess.
Oh.
Well, I moved away.
He bought you Crash Bash.
Well, I bought him games too. Well, I moved away and sort of lost touch.
Friendships.
It was difficult because because I think he went to private school, so and I went to public school, so we lived in the same neighborhood. That's how I knew him. And then once I moved away, we had no way to contact.
Well, I'm sure he's doing fine, probably.
Oh yeah, he's doing plenty fine.
There you go.
But yeah, so that was basically what got me going and started. But this entire time, I was still a console gamer.
Right.
Our family had
I know where this is going. Yeah. I'm about to throw up. Sorry.
My family had a computer.
Until I got my first PC.
Well, I didn't get my first PC for a while. Not until high school, I think. But
my life was forever changed.
I never thought of PC as a gaming thing because at the time we had one, but it couldn't run anything. It was a dinosaur even for then.
Did it have dial-up?
No, I think we at least
Oh,
had Wi-Fi at the time, but
love it.
it was. But that's the thing is, it was slow and it was old. And I remember getting Age of Empires 2,
Mm,
which is a real-time strategy game, and
yes.
I would play it all the time. And you can even ask both my parents now. If you ask them about me playing it, they still hear the sounds of swords clashing over and over again, hearing all the sound effects of the game. Because the kitchen is where we had the family computer actually.
Right.
So I was always in the main area playing games on there, and they'd hear it. And so yeah, that kind of started the segue into PC, but it wasn't the deciding factor yet. I still was a
What
console gamer.
what did your brothers before you play on? Weren't they PC too? Because they didn't have. I mean, they didn't have a lot of consolage, did they? I forget.
Well, yeah, I mean back then, I
Don't out them. They may hear this. Back
not that
then.
they're really old, but at the
Right.
time, PCs were actually, in terms of graphics and the type of games that you could play, if you wanted to play a shooting game, you didn't play on a console because when they were gamers, until the N64 age at the time, I mean, what choices did you have?
Right.
You know, I mean,
Huh.
I don't even know if the rating system like allowed if the consoles companies even allowed shooting games.
Here's a question for you, if I may interject. At what age? Because you had mentioned going to the sacred Hollywood Video to rent games and stuff. At what age that wasn't 18 did your parents allow you to rent M-rated games?
Never, actually.
Never.
Yeah, and I think I was 15 or 16 when they would first feel comfortable buying me one. But at the time, so I didn't have money until I was 15, right?
All
And
right.
I actually got a worker's permit through my high school so I could work at 15. And I did that. I was, doing soliciting for a lawn care company or something, just door to door stuff. And that's actually where I would buy my first games.
Hmm.
And I think it was a Call of Duty game actually was my first M rated. That or a Halo
Wasn't it
game.
just?
It was one.
What a 2000s thing to say. My first M-rated game was either Call of Duty or Halo.
Yeah, it was for sure one
So
of those
good.
two. And you play Call of Duty now. I mean, you shoot someone. Do you even see blood? Like I don't recall ever seeing blood. So it was just you shoot someone and they fall down. But the
Yeah.
same thing was in my T-rated Star Wars Battlefront game, which I was allowed to
Right. Oh
play.
yeah. Yeah. Well, it. Never mind. I'm not going to say that. I was just going to say I'm not a parent yet, and I haven't raised anything besides my dog who doesn't listen to me. So that's going against me. I can only imagine that you obviously only have some sort of foresight in trying to either protect or um, what I'm getting at is what you just said about how you saw just as much violence, more or less, in a teen-rated game than an M-rated game.
Yeah, and I don't question my parents' decisions
Oh,
to
sure.
to censor what games I could play because
Right.
when you're younger, you're more impressionable, and there's some things that
Right.
that your kid might not be able to handle yet. I think that, and my parents, the understanding, like playing the games themselves, they weren't gamers, so it wasn't a thing where they could just turn the game on and test it out for themselves or watch
Sure.
videos on it or something and see if it would have been okay. Because, the rating system isn't exactly the most accurate thing in the world. I mean, like, the fact that something like Grand Theft Auto would be rated the same as Call of Duty when there's way more stuff in Grand Theft Auto
Yeah.
that would justify. There isn't anything really above M until you get to like adult games, which at that point there needs to be something between that and M.
Whole different conversation.
Yeah. And I think Grand Theft Auto should have had that middle rating that that doesn't
Sure.
exist,
Hmm.
So I don't know. I think that maybe, and me too, I'm also not a parent, but if you're looking at the game, instead of looking at the rating, look at the content. I still think it's important
Sure.
to do that before a certain age. I think 14, 15 is when you should stop caring, though. They're in high school and they're going to
We
hear that
should
stuff
stop
anyway.
caring.
Well,
Sure.
and at that point they're in high school, so everyone else is either playing it or talking about the games or just those topics in general. So they're not
Right.
you're not really sheltering it from them anymore.
Sure. Well. Hey, let me bring us back as we could totally go off. So we wrapped up on the few games that molded us.
Yes.
Actually I don't want to say that Kingdom Hearts molded me, but we did that anyway. So yeah, what else you got? What's the next one? What's the next thing you got?
Well, just around the same vein, what are your favorite games, books, and comics? You can
Ah,
pick whichever
yes.
one you want to start with.
Man, you'd think for someone as into these things, and I feel I am, that I would have answers more on deck. Um, put some cricket noises in. No, I think some of my favorite games have been the Splinter Cell series. Big fan of those. A lot of good memories going through those back in the good old 2005s and such. Which they may or may not be bringing back. Ubisoft, whatever. So the Splinter Cells, Witcher 3, classic, big fan. Talk about Mythos. I'll tell you what, very good into that. Let me think.
You really dove into that, actually. You even
I
got into the
did.
books and everything.
I did. No, that's the thing. That's interesting that you say that. So yeah, I had been an on and off reader up until about um 2018, really when your sister and I got married. Because when we got married, obviously, you tend to get showered with love and gifts. And one of the gifts we got an Amazon gift card, and so she got some things that she wanted, and then with some of the rest of the money, I got the first three books in the Witcher series, kind of like what I did with The Expanse, and I really dove into those, and then I read the other three. How many are there? I think there's five in the quote unquote main run. There's the two prequel books. Last Wish is the first book, I believe, technically, of the short stories that kind of introduces Geralt and all that. But yeah, really dove into that. Big fan, but also really into the Lord of the Rings and stuff too. So it wasn't foreign, at least the fantasy side of that. So I'll stop there with games. Uh, big into Marvel. I'm not gonna expound on it because just call me a mean fanboy word or something. Big fan, but also love Batman as well, Superman, all the good stuff. I'm actually, let me bring this up since you brought it up. Marvel Unlimited, the app that I told you about. It's like their little comic service you can get on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been reading on that. Let me see. I just finished up a Black Widow run. That was Black Widow Deadly Origin from 2009. That had about 4 or 5 issues. I finished up let's see. I read an Eternals run from 2006. Because there's a Eternals film coming out supposedly at some point, unless if the world devours itself, which it could happen. It could happen. But yeah, so been doing that, and books. There's a few, but the other series that I was talking about that I'm looking forward to getting into after The Expanse is hang on, let me bring it up real quick so I don't misspeak. It's called We Don't Like Dead Air. The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. So the first book in that is called The Way of Kings. Did I talk to you about that already?
Yeah, you were actually showing me that on your phone.
Yes, yeah, I did show you that. Yeah, so I'm really excited. There's three books in that Stormlight Archive thus far. I think the fourth one comes out this November. And those are some big boys too, as far as, content. But for some reason, like I said, I think I'm more, as far as reading, I'm more into the fantasy side of things, probably because I started with Witcher. So when I see a big boy, like, sorry, I keep saying big boy, a big book like this, it gets me a little bit more pumped. But I'll stop there.
Well, on that note, science fiction versus fantasy, I've
Mm,
noticed reading science fiction that just the literary style, I suppose, and I'm sure it's not every book, but the ones I've read anyway, definitely read different than a fantasy book would. and I don't know what it is, but I've like read even the Mass Effect books. They definitely read like the detail and the technology they talk about is definitely faster paced for me.
Faster paced. Okay, I was gonna say, would you use a word like, and this is not negative, uh, it's written a lot more simply
I think so.
to a certain extent?
Yeah, and it's definitely not negative. I mean, it's not like the
No.
authors are worse or anything. It's just
Right.
they in fantasy stories, they like to go into detail about the scenery and the setting and the characters, and I think even just science fiction in general, any show or movie you've watched, it's all clean and crisp
Right.
and futuristic looking, and I think the writing definitely reflects that in some of the books. And I don't know, it's just something about getting lost in a fantasy story that you just, at
Yes.
least I haven't gotten in a science fiction story, even though I love
Hmm.
science fiction.
Well, yeah, and so this first book in the Expanse is really good, and it's gotten some pretty crazy twists and turns. But like I said, I'm being torn in this other direction too. So it's been interesting trying to um, process that, I suppose.
Yeah, it's, man, all these books that I want to read, games I want to play, comics I want to read. I don't know where you
Yeah,
find the time for all of it.
me?
I don't know anyone finds the time for all of it.
Oh, I quit my job.
Hey, man, if
I
only.
didn't do that. I didn't do that. I won't do that.
Yeah, I don't think my sister would be too happy about that.
We don't talk much. I jest. Your turn. What are you into?
Well, my favorite game of all time has been up in the air. You know, it changes from year to year what I've decided is my favorite game. There was a time when I said the Mass Effect trilogy was
Yes,
my
you have
favorite
said that
series of
semi
all time.
recently.
Yeah, and it's definitely in the top 5, and it probably always will be. Those 3 games will make up 3 of the 5, always for me. Um, I don't know why. It's just I played through the first game, and without second thought, I was already on Steam putting in my card information and buying the second game. Like I didn't even think about it. I just bought the game.
You didn't even beat the first one yet?
Well, I had beaten it. It was like
Oh,
right
okay.
after the credits
Right.
rolled, it finished.
Yep.
I remember sitting in my chair and like just
Weeping.
yeah, it was such a good story. And I thought, well, I guess I'm playing the next one. And there was no decision making. I just bought the next one. And then
You forced your own hand.
yeah. And I remember that it was in a summer between college semesters. It was my first year in college when I played this. And I had a few classes and I worked in the summer at the college, but I still had more free time. And it was all being spent playing the Mass Effect series that summer. And the same thing happened. I beat the second game, it was a little longer, and then I played the third game immediately. And it was like, well, games to just get me to play them that quickly and like almost like I was just doing it without thinking just shows how much of an impact it had on me and how like incredible those games were.
You know, one might say that it's a good thing for the most part that when you reference doing things without thinking, that it's playing these games.
Yeah.
Because you might, there could be worse things that you could be doing without thinking,
Yeah, I think
like heroin.
yeah, that's true. I definitely think that my parents probably were very happy and fortunate that their kid was a gamer and not anything
Sure.
else.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and make the point that video games stop kids from doing other things, but for me, that's just what I did in my free time. I played games by myself or with friends. That's just what all my friends were doing too.
And you seem okay, right?
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
You seem good.
I hope so.
Okay, right on.
But yeah, I mean, it just was. In high school, it was an escape. And then in college, it was just my hobby. And when I was younger, I mean, well, all I wanted to do is play games. I mean, who doesn't?
Right. Man, I remember, sorry, not to side note. I can't remember what age group my brother and I were, but there was a pretty hefty amount of time where we got the classic, okay, you have an hour a day to play video games.
Mm-hmm.
And you can split the time, but your options are 30 minutes, 2 different sessions. But apart from that, it was either one straight hour through or the 30 and 30. And man, the amount of times that, and not that this will be a revelation to any relatives that will listen to this, but the amount of times that you try to weasel your way into, no, I've only played 10 minutes so far. I still have 15 minutes left, Mom.
Yeah.
Oh. I meant to say mom, but I said like ma'am or something like that. I don't know what just happened.
Well, it's interesting. The rules in my household changed all the time. You never knew, it's just my dad had his plan, and I'm sure
He does.
I'm sure he'll get a chuckle out of that when he hears it.
I'm sure he will. I'm excited. I hope he listens. I think he'll enjoy
I'll
it.
definitely show it to him.
Fantastic.
And
if anything, we have that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is some summers there'd be no restrictions, and then some summers there would be a lot. And I remember, and during school, I mean, the rule was you just do your homework first when you first get home, and then
Sure.
do whatever you want till it's time to go to bed.
Yeah.
But during the summer, of course, it was regulated. Our schools did summer reading programs.
Did you do Book It for Pizza Hut?
I did. I don't remember what year that was, but I remember doing that.
Doesn't matter. You got free pizza.
In fact, one year, our school did something where it was a reading program during the year. It was an elementary school at the time. And based on how many books you read, I think it was based on books, the top number of students would be taken on a day off school where they'd be taken to Borders, or I think it was Borders at the time before Barnes and Noble took over. I don't remember anything.
Borders?
Yeah, it was a bookstore.
Interesting.
You'd be taken there, and then you'd be taken to a restaurant. I think it was just McDonald's. And then you get taken back to the school at the end of the day, but you got to basically skip school that day. And that was fun for me because the day off school, like, of course I'm gonna try now.
Right.
I think,
I'll read 16 books.
Yeah. So I did, and I, along with several other kids in my school, did that and went on the big trip. And that reading program, I don't remember there being a time when I didn't have to read in the summer then. Like after that, it just seemed like every school I went to had some kind of a program to read. And of
You
course,
might have. Go ahead.
And it seemed to me like there was never any books in that list that I enjoyed.
Sure.
At all.
Well, I was going to say, were you might have already said this, so forgive me. Were you always into reading, or were you kind of like I have to read a lot in school, so I don't want to read when I don't have to kind of thing?
It was
Which is totally valid.
It was weird. I think I would have been more into reading had I been allowed to pick the books. Sure.
Go figure.
But yeah, it's hard for a kid to say, well, I want to read now, when he was just forced to read a book he hated in the summer, Like at that point, you're attaching reading with something negative. And maybe this is a societal thing with our generation. I don't know. But I feel
what a metaphor for life.
But I feel like that definitely stunted my interest in reading. I did read as a kid. There were several books I remember picking and reading and liking. And then in high school is when it really started, when I started picking the books I wanted to read.
Sure.
I read Lord of the Rings in high school.
Yes.
But before that, the only series I remember even reading myself was Harry Potter.
I had an inkling. Oh, man. It was a good old Mr. Potter.
It was super popular in my elementary school. Like, as the books were coming out, everyone was doing it. So I guess that might have played a part in it.
Sure.
But yeah, I read those books through elementary and junior high. And that was like the big thing I read at the time.
Were your parents ever like, that was a nice sound I just did, sorry. Ever trepidatious, this is my $10 word for the day, ever trepidatious about letting any of their kids like get into any kind of content that had like magic and like witchcraft and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, actually. Like we talked about in the test run, we were talking about Dungeons and Dragons and how my parents were vehemently against that when my brothers were younger, and then a little bit into the time when I was younger. And even stuff like Warcraft 3 has like a picture of this orc on the front. He's a little scary looking, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And my parents just wouldn't let me play the game because of that imagery.
That's spooky. Yeah.
And it's not entirely their fault. I mean, look at the time, like the documentaries that were coming out, just completely lying about stuff, about how people playing D&D were, it was demonic, or there was some kind of evil invested in it. And And I think
Just corporate evil.
yeah, but I think when my dad read Harry Potter and he saw that it wasn't like that, he loves Harry Potter now,
Oh yeah,
and I he saw that it was different. It wasn't the way that they thought.
sure.
But
Well, and I go ahead.
wow, I was done. You can go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I was just gonna say I think the only time. Well, I'm just now watching the Harry Potter movies for the first time
Yep.
with Sarah. Haven't read the books. I probably won't. This is probably one that I'll probably be okay with just the movies. Someone might get upset, and that's okay. I understand. But I remember, I think it was more so my mom, which is totally fine. I was starting to, one of my friends from down the road was really into Yu-Gi-Oh!
Mm-hmm.
Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And I don't remember the extent that Yu-Gi-Oh! And or Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards does like magic stuff. I think it's all pretty implied that it's, supernatural type things, just in a different kind of medium or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was, she wasn't being overbearing or anything like that, but just talking about not being a parent and not knowing, not knowing, but just deciding, what is worth trying to steer away from for a time and just play Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, it's got to be difficult when it's not in your wheelhouse. It's definitely not something that you're interested in, and you've got this kid who wants to get into it, and especially if there's any kind of religious backing involved, or if
Sure.
you've seen a documentary or just a video that paints it in a bad light. If that's your first impression of it, then yeah, I mean, you want to keep your kid away from it. Better safe than sorry.
Right.
It's hard to ask the parent to then play every single game or collectible or anything to get into
Mine
it
would not.
to test to test it before their kids play it. But yeah, I mean, if you look at Yu-Gi-Oh now, I mean, it's a kids cards game,
Oh yeah.
It's designed for kids. I mean, there's some imagery on some of the older cards which I guess could scare really young kids, but I don't know.
Some good old blue eyes, white dragon action in there.
But yeah, that was really popular when we were younger. Oh man, Yu-Gi-Oh just exploded.
It's, it's something. And so on those lines, I never really got super into Yu-Gi-Oh and or Pokemon. I respect both. I just dabbled in a little bit of Bakugan, dabbled a little bit, but none of those really stuck. But that's probably why I'm so mad as an adult.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was big into Pokemon as a kid. It was playing the games. I had cards, never a lot of them, but I remember watching the show. But I mean, those things were huge in my school, everywhere. And the Pokemon games are some of the games I remember the most fondly playing as a kid.
Sure.
But I mean, those games were designed to play with other people who'd also have the games, and then you could battle against them and trade with them, and it definitely added to the experience. And when you're really young, those games felt huge because
Sure.
you don't know where you're going.
That's all you knew.
I don't remember when I actually beat my first Pokemon game. It wasn't when I first got it, or even years after. I didn't know what I was doing, so I was just walking around aimlessly.
Do you know what you're
in the
doing
towns. Now? I feel like I could probably get through a Pokemon game now.
Well,
yes.
No, just in life.
In life? Does anybody know what they're doing in life?
Who knows? All right, last question you got. What is it?
Well, what's the game, book, or comic, or what's just the thing that you're most looking forward to, entertainment-wise?
We're referencing the test episode a lot, but there's the new Avengers game coming out.
Yes.
Coming out towards the was it the end of the year? I already forgot.
September, I think.
Yeah, so that's coming out. Really looking forward to that. Yeah, man. My relationship with video games is, and I'd never thought I'd be saying this, it's changing in the sense that my drive to go out of my way to do that when I have the time is more hit or miss, not in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared this with you too in the critically acclaimed test episode, that when I have the the downtime at home and whatever, I more or less need to choose, okay, what do I want to do, obviously, in this spare time. And so it just so happens that what we've been talking about, games, books, and or comics, those are the biggest options, aside from, time with my wife, which is its own, as it should be. Um, but yeah, so the Avengers games, or game singular, um, I'm trying to think. I think I already said I'm probably going to wait on Cyberpunk for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a commitment that I don't think I'm there yet. I want to be. I don't think I'm there yet. But yep. So that, really looking forward to The Way of Kings for the book. Funny enough, I'm going to read excuse me. I'm going to read, so Brandon Sanderson is the author. He has another series called The Mistborn. Wait, is it called Mistborn series? The first book in the series is called Mistborn.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3 books, and they're significantly smaller than anything that I've already mentioned. So I'm going to get those first, read those, and then go to Way of Kings, just to kind of dabble my foot into his writing style first.
Yeah, you never really know if you're going to like the author.
Well,
sometimes their styles are just not for you.
Well, thus far, and I've read a few reviews on both of those books, both Way of Kings and Mistborn, and some of the reviews, one of them was more or less that Mistborn specifically was written very simply, you know, and I think he might have said very young adultish wise.
Mm-hmm.
But number one, they might be young adult books. I'm not sure, but if it's a good book, it's a good book. And also, as you know, I'm coming down off of reading a very significant amount of Tolkien.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with a little bit more simpler reading nowadays.
Yes, Tolkien books take a lot of energy. And it's kind
It
of
hurts
like
me in a good way.
It's kind of like sitting down to play a really long RPG. It's the same thing.
Called the Silmarillion.
Yeah. Like playing The Witcher 3 or playing any of those massive 100+ hour games. They take a certain amount of energy to sit down and play. And maybe when I was 12 or 13, I could just do that every single day. And now when I have free time and I'm picking something to do, it's not always going to be the 100+ hour game,
Right.
Sometimes I just don't feel like it. And sometimes
Nor should you.
If I pick a game, or if I just end up watching videos or YouTube or watching a movie or reading or whatever I end up doing in my free time, it's always based on my energy level.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing. And I've shared with you that as far as the game side, for the past couple months, I've just been wanting to hop on and off, a little bit of brainless game time. And so that's been 2019's Call of Duty Modern Warfare reboot, just because, the commitment level is small. But now, even my drive to do that has just been kind of, not because I just don't care anymore, but just like I said, it's just, I don't know. I don't know what I've become. I need to call a scientist.
Well, and I think a big part of that too is if you think about the quality of games that come out, about how it's harder and harder to trust when a AAA game is coming out that it's just going to be amazing. You think about when we're kids and we're buying these PlayStation 2 games. Some of them weren't very good, but the vast majority of games that came out were just fun.
Right.
And now
Absolutely.
I feel like, and maybe it's because I'm older.
Games aren't fun anymore.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm older and I just have a more critical eye for things, or
I have to fill out a W-2 for Red Dead Redemption.
Man, that game took some energy, but
it's something.
I got through it.
Good for you.
I did.
I have not.
I recommend it. It definitely slows down towards the end, but it's a good game. Well,
there's your spoiler-free review of Red Dead too. Hey, we're coming up on our time, so what's yours? Hit us with your side of things there.
For what I'm most looking forward to?
Yeah.
Well, I think, and none of these have been like super officially announced yet, but of course, the next big Bethesda game, whenever it comes out.
Yes.
And I'm going to remain hopeful despite the 76 situation. I will remain hopeful that the next Bethesda game will not be like that. Because every time I've played an older Bethesda game, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout 2, 3, whatever, when I've played those games, They were always fun. I just enjoyed my time playing them, and I could just sink hours into them. Even like look up and like, oh, it's 1 a.m. I should probably go to sleep.
Did you play 76?
Uh, very briefly, and then I refunded it.
Very briefly.
It took me a long time to get the refund. Actually,
Did you get the sack that they made?
No,
No.
I wasn't gonna. Wasn't it $200 for that version?
I don't know. Let's not go. Let's stop. Let's stop right there.
I'm not gonna spend more than 60 on a game. I'll just put that out there.
Oh man, yeah.
Okay, I say that, but if Mass Effect 4 comes out and there's like a $300 version,
you're gonna throw your wallet at me for some reason.
Yes, it'll be thrown at you and then ricochet to the company, and they'll just take everything I own.
Ricochet is a freaking boomerang or what?
I don't know. I feel like it wouldn't just stick to you.
It'd be strange if it did.
I don't have to be that strong, okay? The adrenaline rush I would get hearing that news.
That's fine.
Would give me the strength I need.
So Bethesda games, looking forward to, as you should, anything that is confirmed as of now.
Well, they've shown like the banner at one of the E3s saying Elder Scrolls 6 is in the making. So it's being made, or at least we're assuming that it's being made.
That's a strong assumption.
Yes.
They might still be trying to patch 76.
I feel like that's a separate team, but if they are holding back development of their other game to try to salvage 76, I would question that judgment, but I'm not in the industry, so I can't really act
Neither
like
of
I'm
us
an
are.
expert. I have made a game before.
You have?
Yes.
I remember. I'm aware.
During a 48-hour game jam, so it's not like I'm an expert, but I have the experience. 2 days worth of experience.
2 days worth.
Yes.
I love it. Huh. All right. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and close on the youthful hope that Bethesda will announce something, anything, anytime soon. How about that? What do you think?
Yes, definitely. I think the greater Elder Scrolls Mythos will excite me one day.
Oh God bless it. The mythos. All right, that's our time. We're gonna wrap it up. Episode 1. We made it. We're still alive. We're still here. And maybe someone stuck it out through the end. Maybe they didn't, and that's okay.
I sure did.
Is it? You did. We both did. All right. I'm going to talk to you right after this about what our schedule is going to look like. If we're going to, how often we're going to release these, do them. It's going to be fun, but no one else needs to hear about that.
Nope, they definitely don't.
Do you think they do?
Maybe.
They don't.
Well, we'll post a schedule eventually.
All right. That's our business though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Goodbye.
See ya.